1. This TIFU happened a few years ago. And it's not just one fuck-up, but quite a bit of fuck-ups. When I got done with the breakup, it was a pretty hard time for me. She was my first. I thought I was gonna marry this girl. She turned out to be quite the whore. Anyways, I got on my Meet Me account and found this pretty attractive girl that lived close by. I got excited, so we talked for a bit, and I meet up with her. She lived with her grandma, nice old lady. Well, we went downstairs in her basement and started to watch Game of Thrones. Halfway through it, and the tickling began. She informs me she doesn't have sex on the first day. So I just asked to just touch it, just a little bit. I'm pretty horny, so she leads me to her room. I whip my Johnson out and she tells me that no matter what, just be quiet. I nod and she plays tennis with my cock. And what I mean by that, she had a death grip on it. Like if you were to strangle someone to death. And did this twisty, jerky motion with it, at the same time squeezing my sack like she wanted to pop a balloon. I was in more agony than pleasure. Now don't get me wrong, she wasn't attacking me, but that's what it felt like. I told her to ease up on the death grip, and she looked at me like I was an avatar. She asks, or states, "Then I am barely touching you." I say yes. And so she does, and I'm not even sure if I can finish at this point. I somehow do. Fuck up too. So I had this friend living with me for a bit, and I kinda got back together with my ex who was living with me. Well, I kick her out cause she liked to fuck other guys than me. Oddly enough, the girl on the topic calls me up and says, "Come here and rush here like GTA style." I'm pretty nonplussed. So I ask the friend what I should do, and he says, "Go over there." I haven't seen her since the last encounter with her. So I do, and well, she just got done cutting herself. Why? I haven't a fucking clue. So I tried to help her out and get her calmed down. Somehow we found ourselves to her bed. Well, for some reason, my cock found itself out of his pants, and we fucked. I'm not proud of this. In fact, most of my shame is out of the window by this point. Well, since that night, her and I have fucked quite a bit. Well, my friend wanted a girl to fuck. She had a friend that was single and horny, and he agrees. This is fuck up 3. So we meet this friend of hers. Let's just say that I, in fact, got the cute one of the pair. So they go off and get drunk as I'm dealing with some bullshit. Probably rethinking my life at this point. Well, they get back and are pretty drunk, and I'm pretty mad because at this point, I wanted to end things with my fuck buddy. They were too drunk to drive home, and so my female lady friend brings me to my bed. At this point, she's got nothing on but the radio, and oddly enough, I'm not horny. I had a fight with my ex, but she proceeds to pull my penis out and to try to straddle me. So I try to get comfortable and just let this happen. Well, barging through the door, her friend and mine come in, making out, and finding their way onto my futon. So now there is me on my bed with said girl, and my friend with her friend on my futon. I look over and see my friend ramming her like a bull. He wanted to switch things up, but my lady friend didn't want to, and well, neither did I. So this ended pretty quick, and once I get blood going back to my brain, and the same with him. We both had the idea that we are fucking up bad, but they wanted food. So my ass had to drive because I was sober. We get to McDonald's that was open later than most. We get the food, and as we're driving back, my female friend needed to puke. So I quickly pull over and her friend bolts out of the car to puke as well. Lo and behold, a cop pulls up behind us. The car smells like sex, cum, and alcohol. My lady friend thought on her feet as he asks us what's going on. She tells him that I'm her boyfriend. I'm not. And that she is pregnant and was having a craving. But that when she ate, she was getting sick, and that's why we pulled over. The cop obviously smelling the booze. Mind you, me and the two girls are under 21, but my friend is not. Asks us who's been drinking. My friend said he had a few, and that's where the smell was coming from. Either this cop was incredibly cool or dumb. He believed the story. And I told her I loved her for that. I took a shot a long while ago, but I was still scared. Her and I still talk from time to time. But we both agree that was a weird part of time. 2. This is probably dumb, but whatever. I woke up yesterday feeling pretty shitty. Sore throat, congested. Awful amount of pressure in my head. Spent a lot of time in bed with the occasional watching of kids that I live with, age 2 to 6-year-old, which wore me out way quicker than usual. I passed out at 8 p.m. when I usually go to bed at 1 a.m. I woke up around 2 a.m., burning up. My room is usually 65 degrees, but also with the chills. Tossed and turned, and slept on and off until 6 a.m. By 4 a.m., I was fully awake and ended up setting an emergency appointment with my doctor. Now, I set up this appointment because A, I babysit for a living right now, so I thought I caught strep from one of the 15 kids I babysit, and B, I was babysitting a 5-month-old tonight and I wanted to make sure I wasn't contagious. Doctor checks me out and says it's not strep. I was internally praising Jesus because, as a 21-year-old who has had strep 3 times this year, wasn't sure I could handle it again. But an early case of upper respiratory infection. She gave me 2 choices: let it run its course for 5 to 7 days, or get a steroid shot in the butt and feel better in an hour. On top of babysitting, I bartend for my main family's parties for tips and experience. And they have a back-to-school party with a full bar for the parents this coming weekend. There's gonna be 30 kids at the party, so roughly 15 parents. No one wants to order a drink from a bartender with a dripping red nose. I said I'd take the shot. I have never had one in my butt before, and since almost all the shots I've had have been right in my arm, since I'm left-handed, and intramuscular shots always hurt too much to use that arm. Anyway, I got it in my right side, right above the butt cheek. It didn't hurt at first. It was just stinging from the medicine. I thought, great. That was the least painful shot I've ever had. Wrong. I get home, and the family I live with is having a play date with about 10 other kids, all who know and love me. A game I play with a lot of kids is Acrobat, where I pick them up and hold them by their ankles upside down or flip them. They get a kick out of it, and the parents are okay as long as I don't drop their kids. I have amazing upper body strength from this and have yet to drop a kid. Well, they all got in line to play Acrobat, and by the 3rd kid, my back was starting to get sore, right around my shot. I ignored it, and kept playing with the kids. By the time they had all gone once, and the 1st kid was at the front again, I was hurting a lot, but I said she'd be the last kid. I lifted her up, and as I leaned back to counterbalance me swinging her forward, I had a surge of pain that made me fall backwards. Don't worry, I didn't drop the kid. Cradled her against my chest. She thought it was hilarious. I fell onto my right side, directly on where the shot was. The pain was enough to make me tear up. I spent the rest of the day laying on my stomach with an ice pack on my butt, currently trying to sleep. And I usually sleep on my right side, so uncomfortable. 3. In January this year, I attended a Christian camp called Leaders in Training, or LIT, with 6 other people from my church. The camp is aimed at late teens, helping them to learn how to lead events in local churches and whatnot. Anyway, the camp is pretty big and lots of different types of Christians were there. Some who are very strict and conservative, others who are not as much. On the first night, our church is sitting together in the main hall, waiting for the main teaching service to begin for the night. One of my friends mentions to me how he thinks the name wasn't very well thought out. The camp likes to seem modern to the younger generation, and had a large social media presence using the hashtag #LIT. Upon viewing the hashtag, half the results were photos of people at the camp, or posts concerning it, and the other half was of people smoking weed. Here's where I mess up. I respond to my friend that I agree, the name is misleading and suggests something they no doubt wouldn't like to be associated with. And even if you ignore that, the name doesn't even suggest it's a Christian camp. Here it comes. It's a bad acronym. They should have just called it Christian Leaders in Training instead. It took a second or two before my friend and I realized why this wouldn't be a suitable replacement. After these 2 seconds, my friend bursts out laughing, arousing the interest of the rest of my church group. No pun intended. He then explains the conversation to the rest of the church group. They were also amused. However, one of my friends didn't understand why this was inappropriate, and says, quite loudly, "Clit? Why is that so funny? What's wrong with clit?" The 30 or so people around our little group, who have just heard this question completely out of context, give our group some very upset and indignant looks. So it's night 1, and our little church group gets a bad rep, thanks to my lack of thinking before speaking. 4. I was renting a house in a nice part of town, but it was a basic single-story model, with no special amenities. The neighbour's house next to mine was an enormous 2-story with all the upgrades. My neighbour decided to move, but before leaving, told me she left a few things I might be interested in. She said she would leave the back door open in case I wanted to look through them. I'm never one to turn down free stuff, so I headed on over a couple days later. I was impressed when I entered the master bedroom on the 2nd floor to discover the bathroom had a complete whirlpool bathtub with all the nozzles, bubble jets, etc. Now, obviously, I'm not going to take a bath in a house I don't live in, but damn, that hot tub looked amazing. A few hours later, I'm still thinking about that bathtub, and how nice it would be to read a book and have a glass of wine while soaking. After way less internal debate than should have taken place, I grab my book, a towel, a bottle of wine, a glass, and head on over. After preparing the tub, I stripped down and was having myself a good soak. I was laying there, completely enjoying myself, when I heard the front door open, immediately followed by multiple voices. In a panic, I tried to figure out my fastest escape route. There was a little door to the attic in the bedroom, and I figured I could hide in there until they left. I pulled the drain plug, dried off as fast as I ever have, and managed to get my clothes on an instant before they opened the bedroom door. Apparently, the owner of the house had arranged to show it to some potential renters, right after my old neighbour moved out. So they entered what they thought was an empty room, to see me standing there with wet hair, holding a towel, a book, and a bottle of wine. Their eyes were huge with shock. I wasn't sure what to do, so I just said, "Oh, hello," and casually walked past them, showing myself out. Once out, I ran home and closed all the curtains, deeply regretting my earlier decision. 5. It started out as a totally normal Friday night, comprised of a few hours of basketball with some friends and a pleasant dinner. A long while had passed since I last played, and I thought I managed to get in a pretty decent workout. I was balling with a group of 8 guys, and 6 of us decided to hit up a diner afterwards. None of us had eaten much during the day, and the nighttime exercise made us pretty hungry. All was going well. We finished eating at around 10 p.m., and 2 out of the 6 decided to call it a night. The rest of us went up to the apartment that one of us lived in, and shot the shit for about an hour. This whole time, I was feeling fine, but things were about to change in ways I'd never, ever predict. I stepped out of the apartment at around 11 p.m. and was headed home, which was a subway ride away. It's about a 10-minute walk between the apartment I just left and the nearest subway station. I started walking, and nothing was out of the ordinary. Then, about 5 minutes into the walk, I started to get mild shit sweats. It didn't feel like anything serious at first, so I thought, okay, I'll take care of this when I get home. I then realized after a few more minutes that I could manage this state of semi-nonchalance. No longer. There was, as it turns out, some ground for panic. I wasn't even at the subway station yet, and I knew from the increasing pangs that attacked my stomach and ass area that I was not going to be able to keep in what felt like a big pile of rolling lava had I commuted home. The matter will have to be resolved before I set foot in the subway. There is no escape. A few more steps later and things got even worse. It felt as if a plastic bag in me holding my shit together, no pun intended, finally decided that it had enough. And my poor anus was the only thing, the last line of defense, if you will, between my adherence to the convention-bound world of normative civilization and sheer anarchy. I hadn't crapped the day before, and my last meal, coupled with the brisk walk, must have pushed things over the edge. In short, I was in a bad spot. I needed a toilet. Quick. So I began to run through the list of options in my mind. 1. I could duck into a restaurant or fast food joint. But the painful immediacy of my situation didn't allow for a back and forth with some bored service person, from whom I probably had to buy a bottle of Dasani water before he gives me the keys to a bathroom that, for all I know, could be occupied. I had one shot at this, and there was no time for a plan B. Any plan had to hit the bullseye on first try, or it's all over. 2. I could duck into the local mosque where I know they have bathrooms in the basement. But this also proved risky, as the mosque always seemed to be closed when I passed by at night. If I went only to find it locked, then I'd be forced to take a shit on the sidewalk. A most harrowing prospect. 3. Finally, I realized something. From where I was standing, I wasn't terribly far from an apartment that I used to live in 2 years ago. It was right beside the subway station that I had to get to. Perfect, I thought, because I know from experience that at the roof level of the building is a set of bathrooms that, from my experience, didn't require a key to access. I know this because I took a leak once there. Sad, but this isn't the only time I thought about using the apartment for emergency relief. The only risk is that the receptionist may not let me in. I knew the guys working at the front desk, but it's been so long that I don't think they remember me. They're cool guys who usually let in people they've seen before, but I had no idea whether they'd let me in this time. Nonetheless, this third option seemed most reasonable. I know the apartment is open, and I know for sure that once I get in, I'd be able to access a private toilet that no one else seemed to use much. The roof is mostly for families to do barbecues and for people to sit around and chill out on a nice day. I thought I had found the perfect spot, and the only thing that I needed to do was tell the guy at the front desk a convincing enough story to be let in. Telling him the truth seemed to be out of the question. I didn't think any security person would let a stranger who didn't live in the building to use their bathroom, which is reserved for tenants only. I'd have to wing it. So I squeezed my ass cheeks together and walked to the apartment. It took about 3 minutes, but by this time my system was close to crashing. I didn't eat anything unsavory, but my body really needed to relieve itself. So I ran up to the front entrance, opened the door, and gestured for the receptionist to let me in. I knew he'd probably let me in and then ask me questions later. I even knew who he was, a portly Indian man of about 50 years. He probably didn't remember me, but I knew his face. Click. I heard the lock switch. I swung open the last barrier and went up to him. "I am just here to visit a friend," I said as naturally as I could, though I probably looked flush and sweaty from the summer heat. Not to mention the other thing. I hoped to God he'd buy my story. "Okay," he said. "Who is it you're visiting?" "He's in 704, I replied, lying to his face, but only because I didn't want to have to shat in front of him. Now I know I could just have asked him if I could use the toilet on the roof level, but I honestly didn't think he'd be okay with it. It's an expensive apartment to stay in, and now that it's close to 11:30 p.m., I knew these guys were about to go home. I thought getting past him with a little white lie would be best for all parties involved. To my utter relief, he muttered a soft, "Okay." "Thanks," I said as normally as I could, trying not to let on the sheer sense of relief and thankfulness that I felt. At this moment, my body could probably sense that I was close to a bathroom, and the shit pangs were on full blast. All I had to do was take the elevator up to the top floor and open up the bathroom door to take what anticipated to be the most apocalyptic shit of my entire life. Or so I thought. I finally reached the top floor after what felt like an eternity. I then got out of the elevator and saw the bathroom in front of me almost immediately. I reached for the door handle to access the one thing that could relieve me from this painful shitmare. And of course, fuck me. The door was locked. Fuck, was all that went through my mind. The door was locked. Unlike the other time I came up here, they'd locked it for whatever reason. I was now totally helpless. I didn't know what else to do. I thought I was going to shit my pants for the first time in my life. Then, a most indecent and risky thought came to my mind. What if I just took a shit right outside on the roof? Nobody had to know. I'd do my thing. Find a way to wipe my ass and just leave. All this passed through my mind in a matter of milliseconds. I felt like I had zero time to think, as the poo-capolypse right around my ass area was gonna come flooding out like my own Hurricane Katrina if I didn't think of something fast. And so it was. I had but one real choice. Take a monumental dump on the roof of this apartment. So be it, I thought. No one had to know. It was near midnight at this point, so no one was gonna come up here. I'll just sneak into the corner and pull down my pants. And so I did. Against all feeling of shame and embarrassment. All such feelings were completely overridden by the all-consuming need to poo. There was no other option, no other reality. It was either shit on the roof or in my sweatpants. I simply was not going to let the latter option manifest itself. I could never live with myself if that came to pass. Shitting on this innocent family barbecue roof, as horrific and inhumane as it was the only choice left in the universe. There was no other option. So I did the unthinkable. I pulled down my pants and went to the corner where the shadows concealed parts of my body. What ensued was the largest, most potent poo-letting that had ever taken place in my 27 years on this planet. The sheer exuberance and near manic sense of relief I felt became mixed with an unbearable sense of shame and pure horror. There was no turning back now. This was it. The gigantic pile of poo sat there, taking up some serious roof real estate. It just sat there, as real as the barbecue grills and the muskaka chairs that husbands and wives took their young sons and daughters to enjoy and use during the summer. This was a moment that would, I knew, define a permanent aspect of my existential reality in the years to come. No matter what heights of personal or professional success I reached in the future, this would be ground zero of my personal reality, a moment in time that could never, ever be erased. But still, it felt damn good. My mind was searching frantically for something to wipe my ass with. I had no napkins or paper with me, only a black shirt I just bought from Old Navy, and in which I played a lot of basketball. I really liked the shirt, but it'd have to be sacrificed. I could not think of a worse end for a t-shirt, but at least it'd perish for the sake of its owner's sense of self-respect. I also had a bottle of water with me, which I thought I could use to wash my ass with the shirt. But just as I thought of carrying out this excruciating procedure, the absolutely catastrophic happened. At first, I heard a series of bangs. Then I realized that it was actually footsteps. Oh shit. Someone was headed this way. It could be the receptionist doing his last round of checks before heading home. Whatever the reason, someone was coming this way. Fuck. No time to wipe, I thought. This was a most difficult reality to accept, as the thought of walking around with an ass full of shit stains and diuretic markings was the stuff of my personal hell. I could not believe this was happening, that all the moments of meaning, grief, joy, glory, pain, and uncertainty had led up to this very second, the point in time when I'm about to be discovered for taking a giant pile of crap on an apartment rooftop. What was a pleasant and fun night of jovial camaraderie turned in a matter of minutes into a shit-stained disaster. I was about to be found out if I didn't pull up my pants without wiping, and then hiding out somewhere. I grit my teeth and begin to pull up my underwear. I did this against all sense of propriety and judgment. All my years of education, professional work, and home training went out the window. I just didn't want to get caught. But, alas, to my sheer horror, I was too late. In my shit-stained scramblings, I had taken too long to make a decision. The footsteps got closer and closer, and a figure came through the door, no more than 5 feet from where I had laid my giant brown egg. The smell was so concentrated, no one could have missed the crime I had committed. It turned out to be the same receptionist who had let me in. And, dear reader, believe me when I say that the look on this man's face when he discovered me hovering over my brown surprise will haunt me for the rest of my time on this planet Earth. The sheer horror I saw in that man's face brought to life the absurd foundation upon which life's most unbearable moments sat. His face was pale with fright and what must have been a sense of absolute disbelief. It was the look of a man whose mind's ability to comprehend reality failed to interpret the data that his senses were collecting for him. He saw me, with my underpants halfway up my ass cheeks, smelling like a shit-stained corpse, vulnerable to the point of total embarrassment. I was surprised he didn't faint. He didn't even let out a full sentence. There was no scream. Only the faint whispers of a man who cannot believe what life, God, or whatever else undergirded his time on this earth had put in front of him to absorb and react to.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? What is this?
His disbelief gave way to anger and absolute disgust. I could not find words to put together. The only thing that came out of my mouth was repeated sorries and semi-audible explanation. By this time, I had already done my whole business, but still had my pants down. He would see everything, and I didn't even comprehend that I was, well, on full display. I don't remember every sentence that eventually came to pass, but he ended up asking me in his broken English while hyperventilating who I was actually visiting. I confessed and said that I just needed to shit, but I thought that he wouldn't let me in. He got on his walkie-talkie and talked to his colleague, asking him what the next step was.
Why didn't you just tell me? He asked. I could have helped your situation.
I didn't think you'd allow me, I replied. As I'm having this absurd conversation, the meaning of out-of-body experience finally became clear to me. It was as if I was looking at someone trying to explain why he was taking a shit on the roof of a downtown apartment.
"You're a young guy," he said with total exasperation.
"Why did you do this?"
"I just had to take a shit, man. I didn't know what to do."
Then, after going through all his options, he decided not to call the cops. He made it clear to me that I had to clean the mess up myself, which meant grabbing the shit and putting it into a bag. Then I was told to exit the premises immediately and never come back. As far as I was concerned, I got off pretty easy. And so I entered the next chapter of my nightmare, picking up a pile of shit. This was yet another novel episode of my life. I took the black shirt and used it to pick up my heaping pile of chocolate surprise. It felt like nothing I could possibly describe. The receptionist then came back with a roll of paper towels and asked me to leave the place spotless. He then went back down to his floor. I doused my hand with water and put the shit pile in a plastic bag I had with me. I then used all the water to wash the part of the ground upon which my abominable pile had sat. The smell was unbearable. I had by this time gotten some shit over my right hand, and nothing could help it but more water. Of course, the smell clung to me. By the time I finished washing and wiping the concrete ground, the remaining shit specks had stained the pavement. There was nothing more I could do. So I put all the garbage in my plastic bag, took the remaining paper towels along with my stuff, and went downstairs. The man wasn't at his receptionist desk, so I just dropped the paper towels on his desk and left the building, holding a big bag of brown shit, a black Old Navy t-shirt, and some shit-stained paper towels. The smell, I cannot stress enough, was death-inducing. I do not, to this very day, know what kept me from throwing up. I walked to the nearest wastebasket, amidst crowds of people, men, women, children, and hastily deposited my shit package into the bin. My fingers smelled like shit, and I tried not to touch anything else with my right hand. I sat dejected on the ride home. When I stepped into my house, I went to the bathroom and washed the living shit out of my hands. And stripped naked. I jumped into the shower and then took all my clothes into the washer, all the while unable to process what had just happened in the past 2 hours. The truth is, whatever preceded my moments of total exposure and embarrassment could not have prepared me for this episode of apocalyptic shit-letting. And whatever happens from now on, that unfortunate chapter will always stand as a piece of my personal reality. My acquaintances, male and female, will never know that they have a friend who'd traversed the depths of personal shitpression, only to survive through it and pretend like nothing had happened. This is my reality now. There is no erasure, no going back, no unshitting what has already been shat. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Embarrassing Stories, Episode 8. Sorry there wasn't one last week. I tried, but I just couldn't get the stories I needed. So big thanks go to the 5 individuals who allowed me to use their stories here. I believe the first one was actually a subscriber story, but certain types like the TIFUs, I try to just keep them to the actual specific types of videos, whereas the paranormal and the regular true scary stories, I'm happy enough to mix in subscriber exclusive videos. Well, I can't speak for anyone else, but I think I'm going to get the last words of story number 5 there put on a t-shirt. It is a good philosophy to live by. Wise words and well worth remembering. Okay, so I think I'm going to head off now, finish up a few more things. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.